بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. So we continue our study of Hikmatul Ishraq. Now the next question is, what is the core of Illuminationist school of philosophy, which can make it different from other schools? So the author says that Shaykh Ishraq lived a time that on the one hand Irfan and Sufism were on rise. On the other hand, philosophy was under attack and somehow in decline. So he tried to strengthen philosophy, but by benefiting from Irfan and the mystical approach. So we can say he made three major changes. Number one, about methodology. Methodology, as you know, is a very fundamental issue, and every science and discipline based on methodology that adopts can, change, can sometimes, could go to different direction. For example, if in psychology you don't choose a proper methodology, it can lead to blockage or can lead to wrong results. If you think that human being is just a matter of body, and therefore you choose a methodology which is just empirical, then it can lead to very limited understanding and with lots of mistakes. Anyway, so one aspect of his project was to develop further the methodology for philosophy and make it, on the one hand, based on thinking and reasoning, but on the other hand, on intuition and mystical finding. Number two, when it comes to the contents of philosophy, the problems, al-masail, that one has to address, he introduced many new issues. So the content is also different, and what he discusses about light and metaphysics of light is new, although not 100% new, but it has new things, or at least it looks new sometimes. The third aspect after methodology and contents is about philosophical psychology. علم النفس الفلسفي, philosophical psychology, which is different from philosophical psychology of Ibn Sina or other peripatetic philosophers. As you know, in peripatetic philosophy, which we have it from the time of Aristotle, the concern is about nafs and different faculties of nafs, and the main faculty is قوة عاقلة, the faculty which is responsible for reasoning, and that is actually the main thing that makes us different from human beings. And if we manage to excel in this faculty and achieve maximum understanding of realities through aql, which is through universal concepts, mafahim kulli, then it is the perfection for human beings. But for Shaykh Ishraq is different. Shaykh Ishraq says that nafs is a light from the universe of lights, and nafs belongs to the universe of lights but is now separated from its real realm, like a stranger that is not in his watan, it's not in his own home, is stranger. Now every stranger likes to go back home. Our nafs also wants to go back to her home. So this is also the third difference, the third aspect of his project. His ilmun nafs is more a matter of light, more mystical than peripatetic philosophers. These three also very much interact with each other, as you can imagine. Methodology has impact on the contents, on the understanding nafs, but it's understanding of human soul that led to this methodology. So there are lots of interactions. The next issue is that according to Shaykh Ishraq, none of the ways of reasoning or intuition and mystical finding by itself is perfect, by itself is adequate. You need both. You need to be having ta'alluh and bahth together. Ta'alluh is for mystical approach, bahth is for reasoning. If you don't have both together, it's better to have ta'alluh. So the best is to have both, then to have ta'alluh, then bahth. But you should try to have both together. Someone who is not well developed and well advanced in thinking, reasoning, they can make mistakes in their mystical experiences. Is it an illusion or is it a mystical experience? Then what does it mean? What is the interpretation of that? What are the implications of that? You need proper rational scrutiny for that. On the other hand, if you are just satisfied with the reasoning and forming deductions, putting major and minor premises close to each other, making a good solid, for example, argument without any spirituality and without any mystical finding, then what you understand, even if you reach the truth, is very small dosage, a very small degree of the truth. It's like someone who has heard about a city compared to someone who has lived in a city. Yes, you have heard about the same city, so you have some information, but that information is very superficial. He says, كما إن السالك إذا لم يكن له قوة بحثية هو الناقص. If someone chooses the spiritual path, it's a wayfarer, but if he doesn't have the path of reasoning and the ability and strength and power for reasoning is not complete. فكذا الباحث إذا لم يكن معه مشاهدة آيات من الملكوت يكون ناقصا غير معتبر. This person, if is not enjoying, seeing, witnessing some signs of Allah from kingdom of Allah, from Malakut, is also incomplete. Wala mustantiq min al-Quds, is not able to bring the universe of sanctity into words. Istintaq means to ask, to speak. In order to have Malakut and the realm of sanctity express itself and speak to you, you cannot just be Bahith. We need Salik and Bahith together. This Ma'iyya is what he refers to in several places. So, when he gives us a summary of the history of philosophy, he says before Aristotle, like people like, for example, Plato or Pythagoras, they were more into a spiritual, mystical findings. Shuhud, intuition, zawq, tasting. They had attention to the reasoning, but they had great attention to the spiritual way. Aristotle tried to strengthen reasoning, logic, arguing, but then some people forgot or undermined or didn't give enough attention to the spiritual side. Then what continued afterwards was philosophy mostly separated from mysticism. And Sheikh Ishraq wants to revive that. Remember, in his Mukashafa, Aristotle said that Aflatun was a great person, and no Muslim philosopher has reached even 1,000 of his findings, but some people like Bayazid, for example, have made some progress. Sohrawardi himself has a very informative introduction to Hikmatul Ishraq. Inshallah, my plan is that first we will have some introductory discussions. We go to some of the topics that he discussed. Then hopefully, inshallah, we will have time that at least we read some passages, some parts of his book, so that we are familiar also with the text of Hikmatul Ishraq, inshallah. So, in the introduction to Hikmatul Ishraq, you find that he tries to revive the path of the earlier generations, the path before Aristotle, the ancient, philosophers who were very much into spirituality also. And he says, those who are seeking light from the path of shuhud, intuition, they may get a lot or little from the light of God. There is no guarantee. Those who also follow the path of thinking and scientific struggle, they may also get a little or a lot. No one should think that because I'm going this path or that path, I can definitely get everything. You can get something little, you can get something a lot, but what we can be sure is that there is no one who can get everything, to the extent that we say after this person there is no opening in Malakut, meaning that Malakut, whatever was supposed to deliver, has delivered. There is nothing new to come, nothing like a new inspiration. Finished, everything finished by this person. No. He says the worst centuries are the centuries in which People think what we have is satisfactory. We don't need to do more efforts, more struggle. We already have everything. They close the mind of people and the heart of people. He said this is the worst centuries. Then there is a discussion here that there is no conflict between aql, intellect, and shuhud. Or you can say between bahth and dhawq, between reasoning and mystical finding. Some people, for example, the author refers to Estes. Estes, in his work, he finds that there is a conflict sometimes between aql and shuhud. For example, he says, I asked a mystic, do you believe that everything that we see, this diversity, this multiplicity, is at the same time one? He says, yes. Then he says, I ask him, don't you see any contradiction? Something is one and at the same time multiple. The mystic said, there is no problem. There is no contradiction. Estes says there is contradiction. He was not able to find a rational explanation. He says there is conflict, there is contradiction, but his solution is problematic. He says there is conflict between aql and dhawq, between mystical findings and rational reasoning, but we need to accept that there are some kinds of observations and findings which are above the domain of aql. So, in the domain of aql, for example, contradiction is impossible. We have the principle of contradiction. We say, asl امتناع اجتماع نقیضین. In English they say, asl tanaquz, principle of contradiction, which means the same thing. Two contradictory things cannot both be true or both be false. Both exist or both not exist. Okay? Estes says at the level of aql this is correct, but at the level of shuhud or dhawq, it's not contradictory, no problem, because above that. We cannot accept this because intellectual principles have no exception. Either they are true all the time or false all the time. It's not like legal principles. Legal principles can have exceptions to the extent that we say ma min ammin illa waqad khussa. But this is not about philosophical principles. If you articulate them with all the details, they have no exception. And this is for all realms. You have to find an explanation that can show that how one is diverse or multiple. If there is no explanation, then you can withdraw your claim. We cannot accept a claim that is against the principle of contradiction. So this is the beginning of the book, Darsnameh Hikmat Ishraq, and hopefully we gave a little introduction to the life of Sheikh Ishraq and his project, with a historical also review of philosophy up to his time. Inshallah, we go more into his philosophy, to the contents of philosophy, inshallah, in the coming sessions. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.